Do We Have Physics in Common with Aliens? By Daniel Whiteson, from the May-June 2026 issue of Skeptical Inquirer. I want desperately to meet an alien. That's why I must absolutely be a skeptic. We cannot rely on our desires or intuition to guide us to the truth, because the universe is under no obligation to align with our hopes and dreams. On the contrary, the history of scientific discovery is filled with wonderful moments when the data confounded our expectations and led to revolutions in understanding. And so my fervent impatience to meet aliens is what fuels my steadfast skepticism, reminding me to base conclusions about their existence or their nature on data rather than intuition. That skepticism must also guide our thinking about how alien contact might play out, whether it's in the form of an interstellar message or the more exciting but unlikely scenario in which aliens manage to cross the vast gulf between stars and land in Central Park. What would that first conversation be like? Would we be able to find enough common ground with interstellar visitors to communicate? Is there a universal intellectual dictionary that would let us navigate past the unfamiliar symbols, sounds, or smells of an alien language? Many scientists, e.g., Carl Sagan, 1977, are confident that physics and math provide the foundation on which we could build a mental connection and potentially even swap scientific theories. Imagine learning from aliens how to unify quantum mechanics and gravity, or the origin of the cosmos. Consider how society would transform if we could skip forward 1,000,000 years into our intellectual future. It's a scientific dream come true. It's also precisely why we must approach this topic with skepticism. We must avoid being dazzled by our dreams. Do we have evidence to support the idea that we will have math and physics in common with aliens? I've met some oddballs at physics conferences, but I'm fairly sure I've never exchanged ideas with an alien scientist. Without such direct hand or direct tentacle experience, is there any data that might shed a light on whether humans and aliens must converge on the same core mathematical explanations for our universe? It's far from perfect, but we can get a hint about the inevitability of math and physics by digging into our own history. Before humanity had a single, interconnected global scientific community, ancient cultures independently worked to understand the cosmos. If these cultures took their first steps in dramatically different scientific directions, it would suggest that alien investigators might diverge even further from our intellectual journey, depending on their divergent biology and experience. So what does history say about the convergent or divergent emergence of math and physics? The evidence is mixed. On one hand, the Greeks, Mayans, and Chinese all followed similar tracks that began with astronomy and mathematics. Each culture saw patterns in the sky and sought to systemize and predict them. On the other hand, the forms of their mathematics were different, ranging from geometric to arithmetic, and their next steps diverged as well. The Greeks made geometry and astronomy central to their intellectual efforts, while Chinese scholars became more interested in material sciences, leaving the observation and prediction of the sky to bureaucrats while they invented paper and gunpowder. Of course, we expect humans and aliens to diverge much more widely than any early earthly cultures. But how much? To extrapolate to aliens from that flimsy data requires philosophical arguments where further evidence is lacking. And it is here that many great thinkers, including prominent scientists, proceed confidently. They argue, for example, that math is not a human construction, but inherent to the universe, something that any aliens must also discover. The case is admittedly convincing, given the incredible effectiveness of mathematical science and its spooky power to lead physicists toward discovery, as in the case of Maxwell's displacement current or the Higgs boson. Beyond math, physicists argue that our laws apply to distant stars and galaxies, so aliens must discover the same laws because they live in the same universe. But as is always the case with philosophy, the lack of hard data means there are also strong arguments on the other side. These do not appeal as much to our intuition and dampen the possibility for interspecies scientific exchange, but skepticism insists we keep an open mind. Hartree-Field argued, for example, that while math is obviously very useful, it may not be actually necessary. He went on to build a theory of gravitation that avoids using fields or even the notion of numbers themselves. It's not a pretty or convenient alternative, but it suggests that core elements of mathematics might be more like human mental shorthand than the bare mechanisms of the universe. There are similar arguments against the universality of our physics, which is obviously quite powerful, but neither exact nor fundamental, so may not be a unique description of how planets and particles behave. Alien scientists may experience the same universe as we do, but might find other, more alien ways to express it. If we do not share math and physics in common with aliens, it may be much more difficult to establish communication with them. It also makes it less likely that they would share an interest in our questions about the universe and punctures our hopes that we might download advanced alien knowledge of physics. But before you mourn our prospects of learning Centaurian quantum gravity, remember the consolation of skepticism. While the universe might discard our intuitions, it also often rewards us by revealing a reality stranger than we could have imagined. So, when the aliens make contact, we might not quickly learn how to build a warp drive. Instead, we might discover new ways to explain nature and learn something about the narrow human lens through which we've always seen the universe. Either way, this skeptic would be very satisfied. Thank you for listening to Skeptical Inquirer Audio Edition. This podcast is produced by the Center for Inquiry at our headquarters in Amherst, New York. If you would like to support our work, please consider subscribing to Skeptical Inquirer magazine at skepticalinquirer.org. It is listeners like you that make our work possible. With your support, we can continue to promote science, reason, and secular values throughout the world. Thank you.